Hey everyone, this is Dr. Ben. Welcome to the Tinnitus Virtual Summit 2020. Hope you're enjoying the summit so far. Here we have a special guest. This is James Martin, who's a Doctor of Audiology and the Director of Audiological Communication at Widex USA. And we're here today to ask Dr. Martin some questions about how tinnitus, hearing aids, hearing loss all relate to each other. So, Dr. Martin, I wanted to first ask you, as the audiological communication director at Widex USA, how do you focus on tinnitus for an individual who has tinnitus and hearing loss? What do they need to know about what you guys do?
Okay. Well, first of all, thanks for letting me be a part of the summit. I'm really excited. Anytime we get an opportunity to talk about what we do as professionals and educate the public, it is always a great opportunity for us to lay a great foundation, not just for us and as professionals, but for our consumers that are coming to see us. Widex has always had a push for education. That has been one of the things that has been a motivating factor behind all that we do, even from the professional side, but from the consumer side. And so we do a lot of events that are geared towards educating consumers about their hearing loss. What's a hearing aid? How do batteries change? Now that we've got Bluetooth, what does that mean in a device? And how does that benefit a patient? Oftentimes at those events that may be geared toward just hearing loss, we'll get a couple of patients who'll say, hey, I got this funny ringing in my ears. And we go through the name calling. Is it tinnitus or is it tinnitus, or kind of educate on that. But it brings up a good question of what does that mean and how does that impact hearing? So we spend some time educating on what hearing is, and then educating on what tinnitus is, or what ringing in the ear is, or buzzing, because they all fall under tinnitus, but some patients hear buzzing, hissing, cracking, ringing. It's not the same sound perceptually for every patient. And so we encourage them to come in so that we can do an assessment, right, and see where they are. Usually it may be related to hearing loss. Some patients come in and have normal hearing and still have ringing. Which is interesting for the field, because for a long time, we believed that tinnitus was related to a hearing loss. And now that we've kind of delved in more and more and gotten more empirical evidence and learned more about tinnitus, we find that patients that have absolutely normal hearing have the same sensation, this phantom sound in their head. So we've changed our approach on how we manage those patients over the years. And now we understand it's more of a head issue than an ear issue. We used to kind of manage it with putting another sound in the ear, a masker to kind of cover it up. And there still really isn't a cure that we have in the field for tinnitus. But today we have more options with therapy to help people manage than we've ever had. So it's exciting for me to sit down and talk to a patient, understand their hearing journey first, and then look at what we can do in technology to help alleviate some of those challenges that they may be facing, even just soft sound sensitivity, hearing those soft sounds versus hearing this phantom sound in their head. They all fall under the purview of what we do clinically.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. And for our viewers, some may be watching this who recently developed tinnitus. Others may have recently wondered, do I have a hearing loss? So on the other side of it, there's people watching this who have had hearing loss for decades. And regardless of where someone is on that journey, there is technology that can be a tool to help their tinnitus and their hearing loss. Yes. And you work with Widex. Widex is one of the major hearing aid companies. And Widex has always had a focus on tinnitus management, going back to the Zen therapy. Would you mind giving us a brief history lesson about Widex, tinnitus, and the origin of the Zen program?
Sure. So Widex, sound is important to us. And we see sound as if it's a baby. It's our job to carry that precious infant through its life, right? And so we don't take that for granted. So when we look at sound, we want to provide the best sound for a patient. So Widex sound quality is important. it will always be paramount for us, because patients are in environments where they need to hear. We want to give them the opportunity and access to those sounds around them so that they can enjoy life like everybody else. Part of that journey, though, also entails what we deal with in tinnitus patients that come in and describe that, they're hearing, but they have this ringing sound, it's bothering them, and there are different degrees of tinnitus, of course. So when we looked at our device and looked at the research, we found that, having a masking strictly protocol is not as effective. We also found that there were different approaches being used. Some clinicians were using like a counseling approach with amplification, or a stress reduction with some type of sound stimulation. There wasn't a comprehensive program that included all the attributes of what we can provide clinically. So Widex looked at how can we do both provide excellent sound quality and then maybe produce sounds that are effective for reducing this tinnitus effect. So we developed a comprehensive program called Widex Zen Therapy. It is a counseling component, it has a relaxation component, has an amplification component, and it has a Zen therapy component. So it's made up of 4 different areas. Depending on the patient's level or where they are will determine which one of those we use and how many of them we use. Because you do have some patients that have ringing in the ears. They go, oh, I hear that sometimes, but I just ignore it. You have another patient that may have the same symptoms, same sensations, same sound, and they are stressed. They can't sleep. They can't concentrate. They're trying to take medications to help reduce it. The impact is varied. So we wanted to have a solution that gave us an overall picture of our patient so we could provide an effective solution. So Widex Zen Therapy is different than other protocols in that it encompasses those 4 things. Doing a baseline assessment of the patient, where they are, their tinnitus reaction, their tinnitus impact, their handicap, those things, through a quick, simple survey, gives us the baseline to how we start moving with these patients. And so we use music in the device as a way of retraining the brain or getting the brain to habituate or to ignore the head sound. So we're the only ones that are using music. The music is generated through the hearing device. So the same device that's providing them access to all these sounds can then be turned around and used in conjunction to provide sound stimulation to help them habituate to their head noise. So we're the only ones using it. The sounds are generated randomly in the hearing aid based on the properties of music that we know, which I love as a musician and as an audiologist. I love talking about the impact of music on the brain, which is why I became an audiologist in the first place. And now that we can actually merge these technologies, we're able to provide an excellent solution for patients, regardless whether they have a hearing loss, tinnitus, or they just have tinnitus alone. We have a solution that's very effective in helping them habituate to those sounds.
Thank you. Certainly sound therapy is important, and anyone with hearing loss who wears a hearing aid who has worked with an audiologist, they may have discussed sound therapy, and I find that the term sound therapy is very, very broad, but essentially sound therapy related to a hearing aid means playing a soothing, relaxing sound to take the attention, the primary attention, off of bothersome tinnitus and put that bothersome tinnitus in more of the background of our awareness of our mind.
Right.
And have you come across any common misconceptions about sound therapy or tinnitus products or ear level noise playing in the ears?
Yeah, when you deal with a lot of patients, you experience different personalities, and so they all bring their own uniqueness to what we do as clinicians. But a lot of clinicians, when they're working with patients, will describe that the patient wants an instant fix. They want to come in, they want to get a device, they want an instant fix. They want to turn it on, switch it on, and have it stop immediately and go away. That's a lot of their expectations. And that is not necessarily the case. Just like anything that we do, it takes practice, it takes time to develop. So one of the practices that I have implemented over the years that I find very effective is that when I sit down with the patient, whether we're talking about a hearing loss or particularly talking about tinnitus, I always tell them, I'm James Martin, your audiologist, but I want you to think of me as your auditory fitness coach. It is my job to get your ears in shape. It just so happens the tool that I'm using to do that is this small device that goes into your ear. And in order to really understand your needs and where you need to go, I need to do an assessment, which is what most good coaches would do. Fitness trainers would do an assessment, because if you can't lift 5 pounds, why would I ask you to lift 100, right? So I need to know where you are in that journey. And then I need to build some pathways and protocols that we will use to get you where you want to be. Because this is a relationship. We're working together here. And once I get them to understand that this is not an instant, me put something in your ears that fixes it, we're going to work together here to get you to where you need to be. And on that journey, we may need to modify what we do. So giving them that opportunity to realize, oh, I didn't realize I had a part to play, takes a lot of pressure off of me as a professional to fix it. But it also lets them know that they have a part to play in their success as well. So that was probably the biggest thing that I have noticed, that people want it immediately fixed, and
That's a good point. And that relates to, of course, many aspects of life, but especially treating hearing loss and treating or managing tinnitus. The effect we want, we know what it should be, but the neurological adaptation, it takes time. Just like learning a new instrument, like learning a new language. This is the auditory brain readjusting. And with tinnitus management in the online tinnitus communities, there's a lot of focus around research for a cure. And we're all on board with that. Everyone wants there to be a cure for tinnitus. Right now, there's not a cure for most types of tinnitus. And for those who have an open mind and are able to put in work, they can see marginal improvements with their reaction and their response to tinnitus, and that can improve the quality of life. So in terms of tinnitus management, with or without a hearing aid, it does take that same level of effective guidance and counseling. This is what's possible for most people. Totally removing the tinnitus is not likely. So I like your analogy there with the coach mentality, the guide mentality. And you had a background in athletics, correct?
Yes, I did. I ran track at Ohio State and trained for the Olympics back in the day with a lot of great athletes. So I love using that analogy because today, more than ever, people are proactive about their health. Right? People are wanting to be healthy. They're wanting to exercise. They're wanting to eat better. They're walking. They're doing the things to increase the longevity of their life. And in doing those things, we see the benefit cognitively, in the way we think, the way we perceive, and in our bodies physically. So it's not a stretch for people to understand that, right? That it takes getting up every day. If I want to lose 10 pounds and going to the gym and get on the treadmill or exercising. And what's interesting from a neuroscience standpoint, at least from my perspective, is our brain learns with repetition, right? And just like lifting, if you put in the reps, your body will change. It's the same thing for a brain. Our brain is a muscle. It performs like a muscle. If you exercise it, you train it, you can see improvements in multiple areas. And I know this is not a music in the brain talk, but that's one of the talks that we give. And when you correlate music in the brain and what it can actually do from a focus standpoint, a concentration standpoint, they use music as a form of pain management. They use music for relaxation, and music is a universal language. And so the impact that it has, and because music actually activates over 7 areas of your brain, right, both hemispheres, it is a great tool to implement to engage your brain to ignore the head sensation or the head sounds that you have. So it's a great tool if you implement it correctly and you think about all the things that happen when we're listening to music to our body, our respiration, our heart rate, our focus, our intention. We get cold chills listening to music. We can learn to relax. I actually had a patient who started crying at one of our seminars. We were talking about music in the brain, and I played a piece of music for her and to talk about the dynamics of it. And she started crying. And we were like, uh-oh, why is she crying? And she shared with us that that piece of music, her grandmother loved it and played it all the time. She said, and hearing it, she could smell the mothballs from her grandmother's closet, right? And we all have stories of listening to music and it bringing back a memory or remember where we were or what happened. That connection and how it impacts hippocampus and the amygdala is a powerful connection. So again, it's just a great tool that we have at our hands, at our disposal, to really help change the lives of the patients that we both see.
Yeah, it definitely is. And you have a background in auditory neurophysiology. How else does that impact how you counsel, how you educate an adult with hearing loss or tinnitus?
Well, it gave me a baseline to think, how can we articulate the science in a very easy layman's terms so patients understand what's happening? And so one of the things that I do in working either with a hearing impaired patient or a tinnitus patient, I figure out things that are in common. For instance, I always tell the story about moving into our house and how when we moved in, I'd always wanted a refrigerator that had its own ice maker. Growing up, we used those really high-tech plastic molded crafted things that we put water in and freeze. And if you didn't put water in it, you didn't have any ice. And so when my wife and I moved into our house, one of the things I wanted was an ice maker. And I remember the day we got the refrigerator. I was so excited. And the guy came in, he put it in, and that night at about 2 a.m., the ice dropped. Now, I've never heard that before, neither did my wife. All of a sudden, I'm jumping out of bed, trying to figure out who's in the house. Did they come in the front door? I'm trying to figure out where the sound's coming from. And because it was unusual to me and not normal, all these emotions triggered. And so, but now we've had that same refrigerator. We've been in our house for over 16 years. The ice can drop anytime. My brain ignores it because it knows what it is and that it's safe. And so I use that analogies to describe to our patients things that they experience just like that. If you live near a train track, after a while, you don't notice the train anymore, right? Because it's there. So we habituate to a lot of things. So watch on your arm, the rings on your fingers, you habituate to those because your body adapts and knows that it's there and it just ignores it. So that's I use the science to try to articulate the concept of what we're doing in a very simple word picture form that hopefully helps our patients understand without being too techy. So but you have to have the background in order to then merge it with an idea that's common to all of us that we can put in a framework that our patients understand.
That was good storytelling. I felt like I was there with you guys. And that is a useful analogy for someone who tries hearing aids for the first time. There's a lot of new sounds and some of it might not be pleasant.
Yeah.
And then for earlier stages of tinnitus, hearing that new sound, again, great analogy. It triggers an emotional response, which was designed to protect us. That's our brain's response to keep us safe.
That's right.
And also for some of those listening who have loud, severe tinnitus, what I've learned working with tinnitus clients is that for some who have tinnitus that's so loud that the idea of habituating to it is really hard. So yeah. I wanted to bring that into the conversation as well. And I want to ask you, working with a hearing aid company in the audiology field, how have things changed for you and what you've observed with COVID-19?
Well, there are two questions there. One is, what have I seen change in the industry is technology has made what we do so much more effective, and in a lot of ways. It used to be if we were working with a hearing aid, we had a screwdriver and a trim pot, which most people are like, what is that? Now we have technology, we have iPhones, we're using artificial intelligence and machine learning to help us figure out what does the patient's need specifically, what are their intentions and what are their preferences, which has made it easier for us to hone in on their needs, number one. And so the technology has taken us to levels and will continue to take us to new heights in the industry, I believe. But that also has added some benefit to us right now with COVID, because with COVID, we're restricted to contact with our patients. But because we can do remote care, we're able to actually connect with them wirelessly in their house and our computers and make adjustments and make programming changes that we would never have been able to do without that technology. So it's definitely shown its benefit in what we can provide patients right now. There are still challenges as states open up, getting back into how we manage and care for our patients and make sure we're cleaning and being very diligent in those things as we were before. But now more people are aware of it. We need to continue to let them know that that is a focus for us to provide that care as well. So a lot of changes, and I'm sure that even now with what we're doing Zoom and education kind of events, those things will continue even after that, and hopefully provide open doors for us to continue to educate. You know?
Yeah, thank you for that. And I know that each hearing aid company, they put a lot of research into focus groups to try to understand what does the average consumer, what does the average individual with hearing loss or tinnitus, what do they want and what are their preferences? Are you able to share any insights you've gained from those kind of focus group studies?
You know, there are always focus groups that happen so that we can understand what our needs are, our customers are. And that's really important because, you know, you could build the best technology, but if it doesn't meet the need of what our patients need or want in real life, it's not effective. So Market Track has been a very great tool to give us some education on what patients want. And even now, patients want sound quality. They want to be able to hear in an environment where they don't have to work so hard to hear and communicate. You know, I hear very often that patient says, you know what I would love? And I always ask this at our meetings, say, tell me what you would want in a hearing aid if you could have everything that you wanted. It's never necessarily smaller, although smaller is something that people want. It's never that they want to be able to call their children on their hearing aid, you know, that kind of thing. Generally is they want to be in an environment where they can capture sound and not work so hard. You know, because when they don't have it, or when the hearing aid is not providing them access to sound, they have to follow people's faces. They got to follow the conversation. They got to lean in on their chair. And if you do that all day long, at the end of the day, you are exhausted. You are so tired because you've been watching and observing and cognitively focused. And when you get home, you just want to, right? Normal hearing people don't have to work that hard to hear. You know, if I was talking to you now and you were writing a note or something, you could do that and still capture what I'm saying equally. Person with a hearing impairment may not be able to do that. So technology, we want to provide them access to sound, but make it easier for them, effortless for them, so they can be in the real world and hear and not have to work so hard to communicate. That's the goal.
It's a worthy goal. Thank you, Dr. James Martin, who is the Director of Audiological Communication at Widex USA. It's been a pleasure talking to you, hearing some of your perspectives, and learning about Widex, the products you have, and your experiences as an audiologist in the field. Thanks for being here with us today.
Dr. Ben, thank you for having me. It was absolutely my pleasure.
All right, everyone, this is the Tinnitus Virtual Summit. Make sure you watch the other interviews and presentations. There's a lot of speakers from different countries who are here to share their perspective, their specialty in tinnitus. Thanks, guys. Take care.